Good evening. What you're looking at is a video that I got to do for a very big beer brand. I won't mention any names. It's Dutch. And Royal. And it was great fun to do, and I've been getting a lot of praise for this video. But I have to extend a lot of praise for the creative director, Ben Happener, and yet that is his real name. In the talks leading up to this production, I was asked by the people of the beer company, so do you use our products? Are you a consumer? And I said, sure. Now, I'm not really big on drinking alcohol, but I didn't want to lie. So I didn't lie. And I said, I consume gallons and gallons of your creative content. And I think this is a good example of where creatives and corporates co-create something as equal partners. Because I am a creative. And I know many people here are too. Now, in my understanding, a creative is somebody who's constantly in pursuit of the realization of their ideas. So think Steve Jobs, Einstein, Beyonce, and the girl next door who's making beats on the computer all day. They all pursue something that they have seen, they've envisioned. Now, I have a question for you, one that I cannot answer for you because it's about your validation of the people I just described. The question is, what is the economic value of a creative? And yes, I just put economic value and creative in one sentence. Now, I'm going to share some of how my creative brain works with you in regard to this and see if your perception of this topic is still the same after these next 9 minutes. Imagine an iceberg, right? Now, before you think, oh, great, another guy with an iceberg. Bear with me. This iceberg represents creativity, or rather, the industry derived from creativity. The top 20% is what you all see and hear every day, the music, the movies, designs that make up part of your reality. Now, if we're looking for economic value, chances are you'd look for the top, right? But you've all been fooled. I'll show you that when it comes to creative industry, this iceberg is a 180-degree revolution short of reality. Because it's all about the underwater portion of the iceberg. And that's where my story starts. It was a gorgeous summer day, and I was pushing my daughter in a stroller, which is one of the great things you get to do as a dad, but I felt defeated. I was drowning in an ocean of red ink swarming with predators snapping their jaws at me. I was on the brink of being homeless. In my other hand, I was dragging along this huge box containing my last Apple item. The last item of value I could find in my house. I was going to pawn it for rent money and put the rest down as an investment in my daughter's diapers. In retrospect, it occurred to me that it was something of a metaphor. Me pushing my daughter, who was having a great time, swimming around in her perception, while I was slowly drowning in mine, being weighed down by this huge weight. I was dragging along. Question is, was I pushing her, or was she pulling me through it? But how did I get there? I have been reasonably successful. Not Jay-Z levels, but reasonably successful. in creating revenue based on my creativity. I promoted music, released music, toured the country a couple times as a solo artist or as part of a collective. I started an independent record label, founded a poetry platform, and I even co-wrote and performed a couple of albums that went gold and double platinum. So you would say that the combination of all my activities would amount to some sort of economic value, but it didn't. When it really came down to it, nothing had been formalized. Had I had some kind of strategy, it would have been easy to continue my activities, but now the market went down and I went down with it. Now, I'd been angry at the industry for years, but walking there that day with my daughter, I had to acknowledge that the only one to blame was myself. That we as creatives are the only ones to blame for how industry connects with us. Now, let me explain what I mean when I say creative industry, because it is just not just evolve around artists. Every company in the world centers around branding. So the words you choose, the images you create, the videos you choose and create to build your brand are all good examples of creativity made marketable. So creativity and creative industry is a huge market, and it is highly unique. It is unique in that it's the only industry that does not require resources in order to create value. Because we don't need to buy anything to think of a new idea. We may need some resources translating the idea into something that you can interact with, but in essence, ideas are born between heaven and earth, and we just tap into that. Economically speaking, an Oxford economic study from 2011 states that creative industry accounts for between 2 and 10% of a country's GDP, with the 10% belonging to countries like Brazil and the USA. And for the Netherlands, this is 2.8%. That's a lot of money. So it makes sense that it's a lot of money because, let's face it, creativity enriches the life of billions of people around the world. It's very available, has a zero carbon footprint, very green, and it's just everywhere. It's very accessible. And I know this because each of you here has this one or more creative person in your life that you don't know what to do with. Applaud them for what they create or smack them in the face with the harsh reality. Because the harsh reality is that only the chosen few will make it to that 20%. Only the chosen few will live off their creations and live comfortable lives. But is that the harsh reality or your perception of it? Because I have two questions. First off, that 20% doesn't seem to be very sustainable. We all know people that at one point may have seemed very successful, but find themselves struggling to make ends meet today. So visibility is no proof of financial success. Secondly, what about the rest? For some reason, we started believing that there's no life outside of that 20%. But logically, we understand that there must be people that are doing very well that we've never heard of. So visibility is no prerequisite for financial success either. It's very fickle. Question is, how big is that 80%? How big a value does it represent? We don't know. Why? Because nobody seems to take it that seriously. we're focusing on the 20%. Now, for creatives that do take themselves seriously enough to really want to take something to market, there are two options, broadly speaking. One, you find a company that will help you propel your ideas into that 20%. Two, second option, you do it yourself. That first option is kind of tricky because in creative industry, companies that help you sell and market your ideas are very, very expensive to work with. Any creative may lose up to 50 to 85% of the revenue based off of their creativity. So they're left with 15 in some cases. Those are very expensive contracts. The second option provides creatives with a huge psychological threshold because who's going to take care of sales, marketing, and distribution? This is because most creatives do not consider themselves entrepreneurs. They're too busy chasing what they have seen. They're too busy chasing their vision. They view business and being an entrepreneur as a necessary evil. So what's happening here is that there are two realities that are colliding. There is a basic economic reality, and there's the industry reality. And in the industry reality, these contracts are very normal. But in the basic economic reality, the same contracts, on the scale that they are being evoked, border intellectual abuse. And I'm not saying that these companies should not be rewarded for the value they add. I am saying that these practices stem from a time that international publication was very valuable. But today, whether we got something to sell or not, everybody adds their creativity and their creative content to the largest depository of creative content since the beginning of man. So a good question to ask is, what's the correct balance between the added value of these companies and their services and the old-fashioned rewards they claim for it? Of course, creatives need to wake up and smell the coffee too. You have to choose the reality you want to operate in. Are you going to be part of an industry that views you as a commodity, or are you going to be part of the industry that views you as an entrepreneur? There is a revolution going on as we speak, and I would ask you to support that revolution. Because more and more artists are getting interested in learning business skills and learning financial development. But your sense of logic might make them feel more comfortable. Now, I was pushed by my surroundings to believe that I was economically worthless. So to answer the question I just asked, what's the economic value of a creative? The economic value of a creative is based on your validation of it, as with everything we attribute value to. So a better question to ask is, how much time and resources would you invest to find out? My journey has brought me to a place where I was able to found a company that builds business models around creative people, and vice versa. It was the journey that took me from believing that I had no economic value to the validation that my daughter gave me of being a creative. So my value is expressed in my God-given creativity. The same force that created her tore me down, rebuilt me, and brought me here to share this with you. Thank you.